Hey there, welcome friends to a real life video again. In this one we're going to walk through an exhibition in the Museum for Fine Arts in Hungary. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and I wish you a good rest. This exhibition primarily features the works of these two intelligent and sophisticated looking people. They are Galimberti Sándor and Dénes Valéria, as well as works by some other people somehow connected to them. This one, for instance, is a painting or two paintings by Sándor's father, Luigi Galimberti, of French and Italian roots, as far as I know. And this is a view of Kaposvár, a city in Hungary, and what caught my eye is it's like a filterless photograph. There's no extra colors, there's no forced artistic quality of this. Luigi just found a nice spot, a nice angle of the city, and he wanted to immortalize that. It just shows your life as it is, and life in and of itself was colorful enough for the artist, which I believe is quite beautiful. It's quite an important thing to realize. We're going to walk through this exhibition, or at least a part of it, because sadly they closed a bit earlier than I thought. But I did buy a booklet, and we're going to look at that afterward, learn a bit more about the life of the artists and a bit more technical background behind their paintings. On this sketch here, I found it quite nice how the stroke of the shading is uniform. It's one direction, just back and forth, and yet there is so much detail that it adds to the painting. Then we have a photo of Sándor and some students. I was actually not quite certain which one he is. You could judge from the age, but it's not the easiest to make out based on the previous photo that we saw of the couple. But that's okay. A bit of mystery, I suppose. It's interesting to look at photographs of people who lived such long ago. They were like us in many aspects, but look so different sometimes. This painting, as far as I remember, is one of the earliest, or the earliest known paintings of Sándor. once again I'm quite impressed that when you look at a painting up close, it really doesn't look like there's much detail in it. You can see the brushstrokes dancing around, rampant. But when you look at it from far away, it all suddenly makes sense. Also true in life, I suppose, right? Sometimes you have to step back, look at things from a further perspective for them to make proper sense. Then we have this still life with some crops. I imagine this would fit well in the Minecraft series on the channel. Hang it up in one of the garden buildings or something. And then we've got some paintings of people. Very strong lines on the face, very characteristic. This might sound like a very 21st century way of saying it, but they're not NPCs, right? They have some character, some depth to them. Now, some of these paintings are marked with the wanted label. That is because due to the First World War and some misadventures after, a lot of them were lost. And to this day it's not known if they are hidden somewhere or the people who have them hanging in the living room aren't even aware, or if they had actually been destroyed. That little hay drying shed is the first workshop of Sándor. And we've got some more paintings of women. This is by Perrot Csaba Vilmos. So this painting is not Sándor's, but was added here for stylistic relevance. And I quite like, again, the colors. Up close they don't make sense. Why is there such vivid green and blue on a human body? But again, from further away, it conveys light and depth and form. Quite a stern-looking gentleman over here. And this is by Lanov Maria, or Maria Provaskova. That is Sándor's first wife. I actually liked some of her works better than Sándor's, but that's of course completely subjective taste. I like the arms pose as well. Kind of set up as if for a photo, but not forced, not really tense in any manner. It's a wonderful painting. And then here we have some paintings, again by Maria, of some winter village or town scenes. It's nice how that one little house with the turquoise or greenish blue wall facade stands out from the rest of this very bleak grey background. It's again a moment of magic, or not even magic, but a special moment caught in everyday life. Maybe the moment is special just due to the fact that we caught it. But if it is special to us, then why not? Another view of a town with very traditional houses and buildings, church tower in the background, and very faint layers of mountains which I really, really can appreciate. You can imagine the artist's hand just barely gliding over the canvas to produce those kind of faint shades. I suppose that would more like be watercolor, but there is quite an iconic painting, and we are going to see a couple of different variations. I believe Maria did influence Sándor, and perhaps Sándor influenced Valéria later on, because they do have some similar paintings. So this is the view from St. Stephen Tower at a church. You can see some of these quite strongly defined lines that mark the building, and then interestingly enough they continue for some of the background to mark the buildings that are there, but further away they're lost, and the landscape just kind of blends together. Quite the majestic building this church is. Stands tall and imposing. I'm just pointing out the lines in the tree as well. Those lines are something that we're going to see more of later on. This is Dénes Valéria, Sándor's second wife. And there is a photograph of that portrait, but the portrait itself, its location is unknown. And here we have some old, very vintage, as you can see, from 1909. Books and booklets and posters relating to some of the exhibitions that took place around that time. That logo belongs to a painter's school. Some of the students, I apologize for my hand's shadow, but there was no other way to record it, and this is the photograph which we saw earlier. These vintage posters are so interesting to me. If you've ever worked in marketing, then I think you might be able to share that that kind of enthusiasm. I like the spiral here. It's almost like the golden ratio spiral with an artistic touch on it. A very classic font as well. And then on we move to some paintings, and you can see that the colors are quite similar to the previous one that we saw from Maria. What was especially interesting to me in this one is how random the shapes of the plants are. It's almost like someone made the painting and then the plants grow over it, over the entire picture, blatantly disrespecting the scene itself, just growing everywhere, all over. This is from an anonymous artist, but it does feature Nagybánya, which is a town significant in the life of both Maria, but of course as Sándor stayed there in his life as well. And you can see another picture of this upper angle looking down at the town, at the rooftops. I suppose it does catch the eye with just how colorful it is. And it says this is from the top of the St. Stephen's Tower as well. We can see a bit of development process in the subjects of the paintings, and the forms within. And as you can see, this is a very similar painting to the previous one. It uses even stronger lines to display this church. Landscape behind it is different. It doesn't have as much detail, but the church itself it almost jumps out of the painting, as they say. Extremely vivid colors. Again, those lines that make it so imposing, so strong. Can't look around it, can't look away, you just have to absorb and appreciate it. And possibly, from another angle, the same church. Again with those extremely, even stronger lines. Sometimes it's how I draw as well. It's sometimes difficult to get rid of those lines, right? To portray something by just shading alone, you need those lines. That is how children start to draw as well. They need that definition. And this is quite a beautiful painting from a spot out of town. I'm not sure if this is the same town, if this is Nagybánya. But there are these withered trees in the foreground, or burnt trees perhaps. And then you have a background, very bright, this beautiful sunlit field. It is Nagybánya, They are burnt trees, yes. But then even behind that you have a very faint view of the city itself, and even though it's so far away, even a little bit misty, it's not just one mess of paint. You still see some detail retained. There are some paintings I skipped to preserve memory and based on what I found most interesting, of course. This is in the garden of the Roman palace or villa, where another very famous Hungarian painter, Rónai Sándor, lived. And you can see the sketch of this, or possibly a painting that was made from a similar angle, is also wanted. Then we move on to Galimberti Sándor and Rónai József's works. Again, if I've ever seen strong, very characteristic facial forms, then this is a prime example of that. Even the shadow and light the light source is positioned in a way to give this lady very sharp lines on her face. This is also in the Roman villa, I believe. Another side building in the winter. And a frontal picture. Then we come to an interior picture with Paul Gauguin's De Atua, a wooden carving in the background. So it's a still life that features another artist's work within. I would say it's quite a contrast. It's these colorful fruits and furniture and the flowers with a very dark looking picture. It says it is a still life, but at the same time it is a portrait of the friend Rónai, because everything in the picture is reminiscent of him. The carving was a gift to him, and it was his favorite chair. This is Rónai's art room, painter's room. Another extremely colorful painting, which is nice that the angle, it almost looks like a portal. You can see it conveys the brightness, the sunlit atmosphere of that room perfectly. Strong lines are there as usual, and it looks like you can step through the frame once, and then if you'd like you can step through the window as well to enter the garden. like two portals next to each other. I suppose it also helps that the frame is that kind of yellow color. And then this is Reperonai Josef's work. With this, I wouldn't even... You could possibly call this pointillism, right? But the points are so big, and it looks more like, I'm not even sure, like looking at an image through a glass pane that distorts your view. Nonetheless, you can still make out the forms. There's a painting there. There's two ladies looking out the window. Of course, the painter himself. And then we have this Dracaena plant, I believe. And I think here I'm a huge fan of the lines. This plant looks like it's really thick and strong. It has such form you feel like you can reach in and grab it. Very, very powerful painting despite just being a plant. And then some more still life with some fruits and flowers and fruit bowls. With an interesting angle as well. It seems to break the perspective a little bit. The text says that it's reminiscent of the upper downward looking angle that we saw in his landscape paintings, looking at things from the tower. But this time it was not the cityscape but a bowl of fruits that he was looking at. Then another still life where the perspective is a bit all over the place. These kind of paintings are perhaps not my absolute favorite. Oh, but this one, this is absolutely wonderful. I returned to this painting after recording the video. I like it so much, it feels so... The statues look like they've been there for thousands of years. So this is a Cluny garden in France. And this is painted by Valéria. It's interesting that it's nice how the statue's gonna jump out because of the lines, but at the same time they are still overgrown, covered by moss and discolored. Some of them, or some part of them, covered by the foliage and grass itself. That seems like it wraps around them, almost in a conscious, intentional manner. And I was just pointing at the little blip of color of those poppies or otherwise red flowers. What a wonderful painting. A similar one, another garden where some of the foreground enjoys those strong, intense lines, some of it doesn't, creating quite an interesting contrast, in my opinion. Of course, as you could tell by now, I don't know much about paintings, or styles or anything like that, but that doesn't mean we can't look and appreciate, right? These are by Maria again. I like how the swan kind of looks like a shadow of a hand trying to imitate a swan. There's a lady with a dog, both looking a bit hungry, and another one with a goat. This is Carmen. And it's interesting to me that Maria was said to have been attracted to women as well. And that image, I think, might have represented someone that she liked. This is a Wanderer or Vagabond by Maria again. I think everyone in this exhibition or featured in this exhibition was a big fan of these strong lines, strong contrasts, and very defined face shapes as if they'd been cut with an axe. Quite the resolute looking gentleman, not easily swayed from his path as a wanderer, right? Some portraits of women by Maria again. They look quite different though. They look like aristocrats, or at least people who hold themselves in some romanticized high regard. Perhaps a bit, I don't want to say full of themselves, but definitely people who come from a good background where self-importance was taught to them, which isn't necessarily always a bad thing, of course. And there we have a poem next to a sketch of a similar picture. I didn't read it completely or multiple times, but it sounded like quite an erotic poem. And then we've got a couple more colorful pictures. This is by Sándor again, some flowers. And despite it breaking perspective, I think this is very nice. It looks like a video game icon to me. Again, what I was trying to show there is that it jumps out of the picture. You feel like you could reach behind it and grab it, take it with you, and maybe smell it every once in a while. Very nice rendition of form, if I want to be so artistic worded. And we've got some more still life pictures, but soon enough there's a lady coming to tell us that the exhibition is closing. So, with some time magic, friends, allow me to jump to this booklet that I picked up on the way out, just so that we could look at some of these paintings together and in more detail, without the rush, of course. This is an ASMR video. Where are we rushing? So that's where we're going to go now. Alright, friends, so here we have this booklet, the Galimberti, as in a couple. Galimberti Sándor, Dénes Valéria. It is in Hungarian, but don't you worry, that's what I'm here for. So it begins with this wonderful portrait that we saw already. It was shot in 1914. They look, I would say, perhaps a bit happier than sometimes what we usually see on portraits from that period, I would say. I'm not saying people were sad, but portraits were so serious. And I think there's a bit of lightheartedness in this one. So before the period, before the First World War, breaking away from any kind of social and artistic conventions, they created these works, via which they became the unavoidable characters of the 20th century Hungarian fine arts world. Let's have a bit of a look into the artistic background. So we saw this already. We've got the first workshop. It's a hay drying shed in Nagybánya, one of the towns they painted a lot. Sándor was born in 1883 and came to Budapest, the capital, in 1901. As you remember, around this time, Hungary is still huge. Before the peace treaty of the First World War, and mobility therefore in the region is not that difficult. No borders needed to be crossed. He painted this sitting peasant woman when he became a student of István Réti, or Réti István. As you might know, Hungarians, or for Hungarians, the first name comes second, and the last name comes first. So István, Stephen, is the first name of this person. And he painted this one as his student. And he put this lady on this wooden structure that also serves as a podium for standing models. And it seems huge next to the character. It creates an environment, or rather the vivid colors in the clothing and the really strong lines in the face create an environment that is independent from space and time. Nothing distracting you from the lady sitting. Here we have a painting from Galimberti Sándor, and another one from Ripperona Josef, which was another author from whom we saw a lot of pictures in the exhibition, and a good friend of Galimberti Sándor. Oh yes, you remember these, of course. Galimberti Sándor was married to Lan of Maria, or Maria Provaskova, in 1909 in Vienna. So this strict structure of the building, this very composed artificial surface, is dissolved, a little bit eased by this short and quick stroke, or by these bushes and canopies painted with short and quick strokes. And of course the background, as you can see, is also quite freely flowing. It's a very autumn-like color scheme. They are showing the effects of, or the impression, so to speak, the impact of Paul Gauguin's, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, paintings and works. The wooden carving that we saw in one of the paintings also belongs to Mr. Paul Gauguin. They've been married for just over a year, and then in 1911 they were divorced, and we don't know the reason behind that. And very, very soon Sándor married Dénes Valéria, who was 6 years older than him. This was formed by deep love that did not only connect their life, but also became a foundation of their art. It's as if the green of the trees, it looks like it was actually mixed on the canvas itself. It's as if the painter is still working on this picture, thinking about the colors together with us. This is another beautiful one. You remember I mentioned the layers of this one. This was sent to Paris in 1908 for the season closing exhibition of the Autumn Salon. And then it was also featured in 2 exhibitions in Budapest. So the foreground radiates a summer atmosphere, but the cold colors of the background kind of question the lifelikeness of the scene. He re-edits, readjusts the view on the canvas, puts it into an unusual perspective. These kind of trees that are a very firm stroke, but also Also very delicate handling of the brush. They are, according to the text, reminiscent of Japanese carvings, of the kind of onlooking, observing nature of those carvings. Of course, here are the Roman villa paintings. These winter scenes. The mother of the painter, of Sándor, told his son not once, "You are the child of the Rónais, the Ripplerónais." So this was an uninhabited state of the building. The Ripplerónai couple moved in later. Interesting. And of course here's the interior with the Gogwin carving. And this thorned chair, which is quite the expressive element of that period's furniture culture. Interesting. And then here we've got the Ripplerónai art room. I really should have bought this booklet in English, shouldn't I? Oh yes, even here it says the motif of picture in the picture. As you remember, this is what looks like two portals. One the frame, the second one the window. The multi-layered interpretation of the window is a central topic in the works of Henri Matisse, French painter. Oh yes, here we've got the video game icon, right? Yellow flowers in a blue vase in 1911. Even here it says they desire to be out of the painting, they stretch the frame. So after I suppose after this one, which looks very autumny, this looks much more summer-like. Where he applies the sort of unlimited, careless, very free paint usage of his new love, Valéria. He starts diluting the oil paint here and there. And he doesn't care about the background, yes. Oh yes. And here we've got the Cluny courtyard. It's not the favorite of mine, but it's also beautiful. And this is a painting by Henri Matisse, The Forest at Fontainebleau. Fontainebleau, I'm sorry. And Valéria indeed she did go to Paris, where she did work in the painter school of Henri Matisse, Académie Matisse. This is again a very sporty, I could say, energetic, intense and full of movement kind of picture. And we've got some pink flowers, beautiful one. Was made in the art apartment. So this is an apartment, suppose with lots of light and some space for the easel. That must have been some kind of life, right? I'm not sure how wealthy she was, but imagine just going to Paris, renting an apartment and painting. I don't suppose she worked much. Different kind of time. There is an emphasis, or there's no emphasis, but they do have a role. These accessories, you can see there's a glass, knife, cup, book. Dénes Valéria was particularly attracted to old frames that she bought along with a lot of different random accessories on flea markets in Paris. And this is a Bible. Then we've got some pictures of Buddha. It looks quite different now. And we've got one work here by Valéria and another one by Sándor. Quite a different one. I think this church is still standing. I gotta take a walk that way one time and check it out. And then we've got Gypsy Girl in 1913. We've got Gypsy Girl and then Gypsy Act Interior and Winter Landscape. She really liked those strong lines, didn't she? This is only known from a photograph. Otherwise it is either lost or destroyed. This was probably a sketch for this one as the final painting. It is overdrawn, as this says, not like a credit card, but, too strongly. It's like a doll or a robot. There's sections of the body that are very strongly separated. She also looks quite muscular in a way. This brown mixed with deep yellows and the very exaggerated anatomy hint at an ancient culture. That's actually true. That's interesting. It's like a Babylonian idol or something. Something from Mesopotamia. And we've got a sunflower. Looks almost like an eye, doesn't it? It's a bit creepy. And then a view at Bruges with a photo of on a postcard at the time. The green quay over there. It's quite green here as well. Pushing the rooftops onto each other make it look like there's no streets. Interesting kind of perspective here as well. It's a very self-sufficient and confident kind of painting. She knows what she wants to portray and she just paints it. This is where they first used, or where she first used, this color, this medium-like, I'm not sure what that means, orange, that they both ended up using quite often. Another cityscape, Saint Raphael. This is the biggest canvas of the Galimberti body of work. It's interesting how vivid the rooftops are, but the skies aren't. They're somewhat bleak, and they are this diluted texture. He actually writes, Sándor himself, in the newest era, or in the newer era of our artistic development, we were trying to morph nature into the canvas and to push huge motifs that are really large for the eye, to push those into smaller area canvases. And we've got Nagybánya, as you remember that town. Oh, this is an interesting one. It's such a shame that they were closing down. I could just barely pass this and I took a photo, but this is beautiful. You can, I can put the photo on the screen for this. And so this is Dutch Docks, 1915, which was actually attributed to Sándor at first, before it was realized that it belongs to Valéria. Of course, it's 1914. Oh yes, it was attributed to 1914 as well, but it was made in 1915. When the First World War broke out, they were living in Paris, and Sándor was drafted. And of course, he wasn't drafted, but he was an enemy. So he had to leave if they wanted to avoid being interned. And so they ran to Belgium and then to the Netherlands. This is a very full of life kind of picture. It reminds me of almost a zodiac with this belt of different boats floating around, and then this extremely busy, packed with life kind of interior. You can just hear the water, the people shouting, different kind of vendors selling things. It's beautiful. I wonder how they come up with such a composition. I wouldn't think about that if I was trying to paint a picture of dogs. Unfortunately, I do have to say that their artistic career and love was quite short-lived, because Sándor was eventually drafted, but during the running away from France, moving to Belgium, moving to the Netherlands, Valéria got pneumonia or some kind of other lung disease, and she passed away. And unfortunately, Sándor couldn't take that weight, and before he moved to the front, he did end his own life as well, which is incredibly sad, because I'm sure they had a lot more within them to share with the world. But I still really like this portrait of them because it shows them so positively, I think. Well, I did have to tell you about their life, I promised. I hope I didn't ruin the video. They still left an amazing kind of body of work for the world, and friends, thank you very much for looking through it with me. Please, if you would like to see more of this kind of content, museum walkthroughs, exhibitions, leave a comment, let me know. Have a good day or night, whatever it is where you are. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.